Before humans forged steel, built cities, or owned a mirror, some man lifted a razor-sharp stone to his throat and began removing the hair his own body had spent years learning to grow. That should feel strange. A beard arrives naturally. It asks for no tools, no training, no daily maintenance. It helps shield the skin from wind and sunlight. Left alone, it simply grows. Shaving does the opposite. It requires effort. It can hurt. It can cut open the skin. And the reward is temporary because the body immediately begins rebuilding what was removed. So why did ancient men do it? Why would anyone living without antibiotics, clean bathrooms, bright mirrors, or disposable blades deliberately drag a sharp edge across his cheeks, jaw, and neck? The easy answer is cleanliness. And there is truth in it. A thick beard can trap sweat, dust, food, and insects. Where bathing was limited and parasites were common, less facial hair may have made the body easier to inspect and clean. Lice need hair in which to cling, hide, and lay eggs. A beard could also catch in tools, collect smoke near a fire, or hang into food. In a fight, it offered an enemy a painful handle attached to the face. Those reasons probably mattered. But I do not think they explain the whole decision. Ancient life was full of discomfort. People tolerated smoky shelters, rough clothing, wounds that healed badly, and teeth that ached for years. Yet men decided facial hair deserved special attention. They did not merely wash it, they removed it. That difference matters. The first tools capable of cutting a beard were not polished razors with safe handles. They were pieces of stone. Flint can fracture into a thin edge sharp enough to slice flesh. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, can break into edges so fine that modern surgeons have tested obsidian blades for specialized cutting. That does not prove every flake found by archaeologists was a shaving tool. Stone rarely comes with instructions carved into it. But the technology existed. A carefully struck flake could cut hair close to the skin. A shell edge could scrape it. Two shells pressed together could work like crude tweezers, gripping hairs and pulling them out one by one. Pause on that image. Not trimming a beard with scissors. Not softening it with warm water and cream. Pulling it out, hair by hair. Anyone willing to do that was not choosing the easiest path through the morning. And here is where the story becomes harder. We cannot identify the first man who shaved. Hair rarely survives for millennia. A stone blade used on skin may look much like one used on plants, hides, or meat. Ancient art can show a smooth face, but that does not prove the real person shaved. The evidence is incomplete, but incomplete does not mean meaningless. It means we have to think like detectives. We have sharp tools capable of removing hair. We have later cultures using razors, tweezers, scraping tools, and depilatory mixtures. We have images of men with controlled facial hair, and we have a pattern that appears again and again. Humans do not simply accept the face biology gives them. They edit it. I find that more revealing than the razor itself. Other animals groom. Primates pick parasites from fur. Birds clean their feathers. Mammals rub against trees or lick dirt from their bodies. But humans go further. We cut, pluck, paint, pierce, tattoo, scar, perfume, and reshape. We do not only clean the body, we turn it into a decision. Imagine the act near the end of the Stone Age. The light is weak. A man crouches beside still water because it may be the closest thing he has to a mirror. The reflection moves whenever wind touches the surface. In one hand, he holds a small black flake. Its edge is almost invisible. He presses it against his cheek. There is no shaving cream to show where the blade has passed. No antiseptic if the cut becomes infected. No bright room. No flat glass. The angle of his jaw disappears when water ripples. He pulls the edge downward, slowly. A few hairs fall, then more. One careless movement could open the skin near his mouth. A harder slip could cut his throat. Even a small wound could become dangerous in a world where bacteria were unknown and infection had no reliable cure. Now ask the question again. Why was a bare face worth that risk? Perhaps the answer began with lice. Perhaps it began with heat, comfort, or fighting. But once a difficult act becomes visible, it can acquire a second purpose. It can become proof. Proof that a man belongs to a group, proof that he follows a rule, proof that he has reached a certain age, proof that he is disciplined enough to endure pain, proof that he is not among those beyond the river or outside the walls. This is where grooming stops being private. The moment one group shaves and another does not, the face becomes social territory. A beard can separate the adult from the boy. A shaved face can separate the soldier from the civilian. A particular style can distinguish a priest, ruler, mourner, captive, or outsider. The same hair that grows without permission can be controlled to show obedience, resistance, pride, grief, or rank. And that raises a more uncomfortable possibility. Maybe the first great change was not that men learned how to shave. Maybe it was that communities learned they could tell men how they should look. A stone blade could remove hair, But a custom could do something more powerful. It could make a man feel honored for removing it, or ashamed for allowing it to remain. That is the part of this history I find impossible to ignore. The earliest razor was not only a cutting tool, it may have been one of humanity's first technologies for editing identity. It allowed a person to change the age, strength, discipline, or belonging that others imagined when they looked at him. And once societies discovered that the face could be edited, they began assigning meanings to every choice. In one civilization, a beard would become evidence of wisdom. In another, it would suggest disorder. One ruler would shave to appear civilized. Another would wear an artificial beard to appear divine. Soldiers would remove facial hair before battle. Mourners would cut it in grief. Victors would sometimes take it from defeated men, not because the hair itself mattered, but because humiliation works best when it is visible. So before we move into temples, armies, and royal courts, remember the man beside the water. He may believe he is only scraping hair from his skin, but the act is already becoming something larger. He is learning that the human face can be redesigned, and that whoever controls its meaning may also control the person wearing it. When you see a clean-shaven face or a heavy beard today, what do you notice first? A personal choice? Or a rule so old that it no longer feels like one? That question becomes easier to answer when shaving leaves the riverbank and enters the palace. Once rulers, priests, and armies began deciding what a proper man should look like, facial hair stopped being a private habit. It became part of the social order. Ancient Egypt gives us one of the clearest examples. Egyptian elites valued smooth skin. Men of rank often removed hair from the face and body, and some priests shaved even more completely. Clean skin suggested control, purity, and separation from ordinary life. But practicality alone does not explain the care involved. Copper razors survive from ancient Egypt. The Metropolitan Museum of Art holds a razor dated to roughly 1950 to 1885 BC from the Middle Kingdom. Another grooming set from the tomb of Hatnefer, dating to around 1492 to 1473 BC, included a razor and a mirror. That detail matters. By then, shaving was no improvised experiment with a sharp stone. It had become a recognized routine supported by specialized objects and placed inside tombs with the dead. In other words, grooming had become important enough to follow a person into the afterlife. What strikes me most is that the Egyptians did not simply remove hair. They turned hairlessness into a sign of order. A smooth face could suggest that a man had time, tools, servants, and access to clean water. It separated the controlled body from the neglected one. The face became evidence that a person belonged to civilization as Egypt defined it. And then comes the contradiction. Egyptian kings were often shown wearing long ceremonial beards. Not natural beards, artificial ones. A pharaoh might remove his real facial hair, then tie a narrow, false beard beneath his chin before appearing as king. Even Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most famous female rulers, was represented with the traditional royal beard. Why remove a beard only to put another one back? Because the real beard and the royal beard were doing different jobs. The natural beard belonged to the body. The false beard belonged to the throne. It acted like a crown, a scepter, or a sacred costume. It told the audience that the person wearing it had entered the role of divine ruler. This is the moment when shaving reveals its deepest power. Technology allowed the Egyptians to erase nature from the face. Ritual allowed them to replace it with a controlled symbol. The king did not simply have a beard. The state issued him one, and once appearance becomes part of office, the body can be treated like a uniform. But travel north across the Mediterranean, and the rules change. Among many ancient Greeks, a full beard carried honor. It could suggest maturity, experience, and the dignity expected of an adult man. Greek gods such as Zeus and heroes such as Heracles were often shown with powerful bearded faces. Where an Egyptian elite man might see refinement in smooth skin, a Greek man could see strength and seriousness in facial hair. The same biological feature had not changed. The culture reading it had. This is why I think arguments about whether beards are naturally noble, aggressive, wise, or uncivilized miss the point. Hair has no fixed social meaning. Communities assign the meaning, repeat it, and eventually make it feel natural. In Greece, cutting a beard could become emotionally charged. A man might cut it during mourning, using visible loss to express invisible grief. But if another person cut it by force, the act could become humiliation. The difference was consent. When a grieving man removed his own beard, he controlled the message. When an enemy removed it, the enemy controlled him. That distinction appears repeatedly in human history. The same action can be discipline when chosen, ritual when shared, and domination when imposed. And then war changes the fashion again. Plutarch tells us that Alexander the Great was said to have encouraged Macedonian soldiers to shave before battle because an enemy could seize a beard in close combat. We should be careful here. Plutarch wrote centuries after Alexander, and even his wording presents the story as something reported, not a surviving military order. Still, the story endured because it made immediate sense. Imagine two men fighting at arm's length. Shields collide, spears are lost, hands reach for anything that offers control. A beard is not decoration in that moment. It is a handle attached to the jaw. Whether Alexander issued a formal command or not, his own clean-shaven image helped make the bare face fashionable across the Hellenistic world. Conquest did more than move armies. It moved hairstyles, clothing, language, and ideas about what power should look like. The beard had once helped announce adult masculinity. Now the smooth face could announce military modernity. A conqueror changed the image of authority, and thousands followed. Rome inherited many of these contradictions. For early Roman men, the first shave could become a rite of passage. The removed hair might be dedicated to a household god, marking the transition from youth into adult civic life. Think about how strange that is. Biology produces facial hair as a sign of physical maturity. Roman custom could require removing it to mark social maturity. Nature said, "You are becoming a man." Society answered, "Prove it by shaving." Roman barbershops then turned to the act into public life. Men gathered not only to be shaved, but to exchange news, rumors, jokes, and political talk. The razor moved across the skin while information moved through the city. A shave was personal, but it was not private. And because the blade was close, the experience required trust. A poor barber could leave cuts, irritation, or scars, yet men returned because grooming also offered access to the social room where opinions were formed and reputations were tested. Then Roman fashion changed again. Some emperors favored beards, others preferred smooth faces. Hadrian famously wore one, and later rulers helped restore the beard as a symbol of Greek learning, military toughness, or philosophical depth. The face of power kept changing because power itself kept changing. That may be the most revealing pattern. No style wins forever. The victorious look becomes normal. The normal look becomes old. The old look becomes something the next generation can reject. But before that cycle reaches the modern world, there is a darker lesson we need to confront. If rulers can use facial hair to grant identity, they can also use it to take identity away. A beard can be grown with pride. It can be cut in grief. And in the hands of someone else, it can become the exact place where humiliation begins. And humiliation begins because facial hair is never only physical. When someone cuts a man's beard against his will, the wound may be small, but the message is enormous. The act says, "Your face no longer belongs to you. I decide how others will see you." That is why forced shaving appears so often in stories of captivity, punishment, military discipline, and public shame. The goal is not simply to remove hair, it is to break continuity between the person a man believed himself to be and the person the world is now ordered to see. I think this is where the history of shaving becomes more than a story about grooming. It becomes a story about authority. Who gets to decide what a respectable man looks like? Who decides whether a beard means wisdom, laziness, danger, devotion, rebellion, or weakness? And why do those meanings change so quickly? The answer is that appearance works like a language, but no one controls that language forever. A beard can become the uniform of power. Then, once every judge, officer, father, and politician wears one, a younger generation may begin to see the clean-shaven face as freedom. But the reverse can happen just as easily. When offices, schools, armies, and corporations demand smooth faces, growing a beard can become a refusal. The hair itself has not changed. What changes is the pressure around it. That is why facial hair fashion moves in cycles. One generation uses the style to prove that it belongs. The next uses the opposite style to prove that it does not. The face becomes a quiet battlefield, where obedience and independence can look almost identical from the outside. Each choice feels personal, yet every choice is made inside a world already filled with meanings. Modern psychology shows that we still read those meanings almost instantly. In a 2012 study published in Behavioral Ecology, researchers showed men's faces with and without full beards to participants in New Zealand and Samoa. Bearded faces were generally judged as older and higher in social status. When the same men displayed angry expressions, the bearded versions were also seen as more aggressive. But here's the surprising part. The beard did not automatically make the men more attractive. That matters because it challenges the simple claim that beards exist only to attract partners. A beard may do something broader. It may change how others estimate age, strength, seriousness, rank, or threat. In other words, the ancient signal is still active. We may not consciously think that beard suggests maturity or that smooth face suggests discipline. The judgment often arrives before the explanation. This raises a larger question. How many choices do we believe are private when they are actually negotiations with an audience? We choose haircuts, clothing, tattoos, makeup, and posture. We tell ourselves we are expressing who we are. Sometimes that is true. But sometimes we are adjusting ourselves to avoid punishment, gain trust, enter a profession, attract a group, or distance ourselves from another. The razor is only one example. It belongs to a larger human habit, changing the body so the social world will read us correctly. And there is a lesson here that reaches far beyond beards. Technology gives us the power to alter appearance. Culture gives those alterations meaning. Institutions turn some meanings into rules. That sequence can create freedom. It can also create control. A razor can help someone feel clean, confident, and fully himself. The same razor placed in the hands of an army, prison, school, or employer can become a demand for conformity. The object does not decide which role it plays. The surrounding power does. To me, that is the real history hidden inside the morning shave. It is not simply the story of men becoming cleaner. It is the story of human beings discovering that identity can be edited, and then discovering that edited identities can be rewarded, judged, or enforced. The first stone blade changed the face. The first social rule changed the person behind it. And perhaps that is why this subject still feels personal. Every morning, millions of men stand before a mirror and make a small decision. Shave it, trim it, shape it, let it grow. The movement may take only minutes, but behind it stand thousands of years of religion, war, fashion, class, and expectation. A modern razor may be safer than Obsidian. The pressure surrounding it may be harder to see. So the next time you look at a bearded man, do not ask only whether you like the style. Ask what story you have already assigned to him. Do you assume he is older, tougher, wiser, less disciplined, more traditional, more dangerous? And then ask where that judgment came from. Was it biology? Was it culture? Was it your family? Was it a film, a uniform, a religious image, or a face associated with power? The most important lesson is not that beards mean one thing. It is that they can be made to mean almost anything. Civilizations change the code. Generations reverse it. Institutions enforce it. Individuals try to reclaim it. But the human urge beneath all of this remains the same. We want to be seen in a way that feels true, and we fear being seen in a way someone else has chosen for us. That is why the history of shaving matters. It reminds us that freedom can begin with something as small as recognizing the difference between a choice and a command. So here's the question I want to leave with you. When you change your appearance, are you expressing yourself or obeying a rule that has become so familiar you can no longer hear it? Tell me in the comments what a beard or a clean-shaven face means where you live. Has that meaning changed between your generation and your parents' generation? Have you ever changed your appearance because a job, a relationship, a tradition, or a community expected you to? I want to hear the stories behind the faces. And if you enjoy uncovering the hidden history inside ordinary human habits, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There are countless daily habits whose roots reach back into temples, battlefields, workshops, and vanished worlds. The next story may already be sitting on your body, in your home, or in the way you look at another person. Until then, take one more look in the mirror. Not to judge the face looking back at you, but to ask who taught you what that face was supposed to mean.